Hello, Gobshites, and welcome to Honest to Gob. I'm your host, Gemma Ray. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. I say this week's episode. This episode has been 2 weeks in the making because I have struggled to find a time where I've not been dripping in children or having the constant sound of drilling in the background, and not the kind of drilling that I would like, because we are having building work done at our house at the moment. In fact, I'll be able to insert a little clip right now about how this sounds right now. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I am recording this from my lovely friend Kim's house because I go to the gym with Kim. She also does my nails. She is my the cheapest therapist, actually, that I know, because I get my lovely nails done at the same time. And I put on our gym group this morning, does anybody know of any co-working spaces, hot desk spaces where I could go and do some recordings today? Because there's nowhere like nearby where we live. And she messaged me privately and she's like, look, I'm out today. If you want to use my house, you can. So I was like, yes, please. Because she has, as you can see, a beautiful home. So thank you, first of all, to my amazing friend Kim and her hubby Jack for letting me basically gate crash and squat in your home for this episode. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So this episode is about how to know when you are mentally spiraling out of control. Let me set the scene. Last week, it was Monday, and for a bit of backstory and context, we have building work going on at the moment, and part of it has been funded by social services to be able to create a bedroom for my youngest, who's currently still in mine and my husband's bedroom, and he shouldn't be because he'll be 3 in a couple of weeks, and he needs his own space. It's not the done thing. Someone did suggest he should never have been placed with us, which is just a horrifying thought because, you know, he's part and parcel of the family now. That ain't happening. So social services are part funding, basically an extension to create a bedroom. It's a box. That's all we're getting, and that's fine. And so we knew that we were going to have to pay for a bit more to be able to kit that out with bathrooms, carpets, the furnishings, all the rest of it. Now, my home is a very old cottage. It's a couple of 100 years old. And in starting this work, actually, there's a lot of things that need to be done. So before the children came, if you are a new listener to this podcast, I am a kinship foster carer, and almost 3 years ago, my niece and nephew came into my care very unexpectedly, very split-second decision. And at that point in our lives, we were in the process of paying off the renovation of our home that had been completed 3 years previously. And we were actively saving to repair the gutters, the fascias, the boring shit that us adults have to do when we own a home. We knew they kind of really needed some attention when we'd renovated our house. We'd kind of done the bare minimum that we could on a very limited budget. And the majority of that had been about the inside of the home rather than the external boring bits. So we'd kept the gutters, we'd kept the fascias, we didn't get drainage put in, even though we should because we're surrounded by fields, so the water table's high. So all of those things have been quoted for, and we need new windows. We need to make the house watertight. They actually took the render off our property, and it was a bit shocking, the holes in the bricks, which makes sense why we've got a lot of damp in the house. And we've got kids. I don't want damp. I don't want mold. So we took the very big, brave, grown-up decision that, yes, we are going to need to get an extra contract, an extra quote for all of the extra work that needs to be done. But that work is like adding, because as they uncover more problems, as is always the fucking case, like if anybody's ever watched Grand Designs with Kevin McLeod, the project always costs 3 times as much, and somebody has a child in that time as well. Let's hope that doesn't happen for us. But yes, the costs were starting to spiral. Now, 3 months ago, I dramatically reduced my client work, thinking that another child was coming into our care imminently. So for the last 3 months, I haven't been working half as much as I used to. Still doing bits, still working, but just not like I was, which means my income is dramatically reduced. So last Monday, we're still waiting for social services to do their part. Like, it's just taking forever. And basically what we now find ourselves in a situation where part of our house may be open and exposed to the elements, and either we're going to have to find the money and fund it, or it's going to be open for months, which is going to cause so many problems and issues. And we just don't want to do that. It's, we're coming through winter. It's just not ideal. So I had started to spiral out of control mentally because I just felt like nothing was in my control, and I started to catastrophize everything. And the way that that presented was a lack of sleep, first of all, mainly because I was on my phone a lot. I am someone who used to charge my phone downstairs every night. As I'm speaking these words out loud, I don't know why I've stopped doing that, because that was so fundamental to my well-being. Like, slap on the hand, Gemma, you need to start that tonight. Get back to doing that straight away. So I used to go up to bed, charge my phone downstairs, I'd read my Kindle for 10 minutes and go to sleep. And I don't know why. I'm saying this out loud. I don't know why I've stopped doing that, because now I'm on Reddit. I'm on the Mail Online. Sorry, my friends Ben and Stacey, they'll hate me saying that. I'm reading the Mail Online. I'm reading Facebook, or if the app blockers haven't kicked in. And it's just such a drain and a waste of my time. But one thing I'd done in the week before, I don't know how this had happened because it's just so not me. I downloaded a game called Townville. Okay. Now, if you're in your 40s like me, you might remember the game Sims. So it's a bit like a modern day version of Sims, but Townville, you have to grow and develop a farming community and housing plot, basically. So you have to grow crops to feed your cows and your chickens and your sheep, and then you collect milk from the cows and eggs from the chickens and wool from the sheep, and you make clothing or bagels or butter or cream, and then you sell that and you make money to develop a school or a shopping centre, or before you know it, like me, I had an airport developed, my train station was developed. Like, I was getting obsessed with this game and I was spending hours and hours and hours on this game. But more importantly, I was spending hours on this game at night time, therefore not sleeping as much, therefore being tired, therefore feeling stress, and therefore being an unhinged, cranky, snappy mess. And it gets to the Monday night and I'm panicking because I'm thinking I'm going to have to go back to working more hours than I did before. I don't know how I'm going to cope. I don't know how that's going to fit around the children. I don't know how I did it in the past. And I'm looking at our accounts and thinking, where can we scrape money from? And it was just like, unnecessarily spiraling out of control. But then I'm like, Sean, my husband, is trying to have serious conversations with me about legal contracts and here's what we need to do and here's the order of the work we need to do. And I'm like, just hang on a minute, I'm just growing some corn and I'm cultivating strawberries on this stupid fucking game, right? And I could tell he was getting pissed off with me. So then, I don't know why, I'm sat on the sofa and I just start like involuntary shaking. And I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? And it's that this has only ever happened like a few times before, but mainly when I was in the throes of really poor mental health that spiraled out of control, and I can feel that my body's shaking. So I'm like, right, okay, all of this recent training that I've had about trauma and the impact of trauma and the impact on children, I'm not talking about myself here, but the impact on our nervous system. And I'm thinking, I also trained as a master health coach a couple of years ago. And I'm like, this is me. Like, in my nervous system is absolutely shot right now because I have caused this panic. And Sean's looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Like, why is this happening? I was like, I don't know. And I felt like I would burst into tears at any moment, which I did on multiple occasions, all in the course of these like 2 or 3 day period. So I break my nail, which seems to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I'm sat at home, I'm sobbing because I've broke my nail. I love my nails, they're all my own because my amazing nail tech Kim is just brilliant at them. I broke my nail and I text Kim, I was like, is there any chance you can fit me in to fix my nail? She's like, yeah, of course I can, come at 9:15. So I drop the kids off to school, come to Kim's, sit down, pop my keys down. She goes, are you all right? I'm like, no, I'm not. And I just spill and pour my heart out to her. And I'm like, and I'm just wasting all of my time on this stupid game called Townville. And bless her, she bursts out laughing. So I open the app up and I'm like, look at my cows, look at my crops. And she gets my hands and she goes, Gemma, you need to fucking delete that game. I'm like, I know I do. So I pull myself together. I get my lovely nail repaired. feel like a whole person again. I get in my car and I do this thing that a fellow foster carer has taught me, where you just put your hands on the steering wheel, take some deep breaths, and just try and calm yourself down. It's really good if you've had a chaotic morning dropping the kids off. It's really good to just do it to ground yourself before you move on after the school run, so that you can drive safely. So I knew I was in a bit of a state, and I thought, right, I have to calm down now. So I'm like, but I know what I need to do. I need to ring my mum, because mum's going to sort it out. Because, like in these moments where you're mentally spiraling, I think sometimes I know I do, I revert to like little girl Gemma. And even though I'm in my 40s, and even though I think over the last decade in particular, kind of I'm one of these like, oh, I don't need my mum, I'm cool, I'm a grown up, I don't need her support and her help. At that moment, I knew that I did. So I ring my mum, pour my heart out to my mum. She puts me on loudspeaker because my dad's there. Like, why do mum and dads do that? Who were in the 60s. Do your mum and dads do that in the 60s? Like, hang on, your dad's here, let me put you on loudspeaker. So I'm pouring my heart out to my mum and dad, which instantly makes me feel better, because all of these emotions have been stored up. And then I ring my husband and tell him like exactly what's going on, and I'm just completely spiraling out of control. Now, luckily, I had what I thought was an NVR fostering parenting course in Formby, which is where my local authority's training is. And I had like mum and friends saying, like, just don't go, just go to bed, just rest. You really are spiraling. You need to just chill out. You need to like take a minute. And I thought, no, because if I don't want to miss the course, I'm training to be an NVR parenting, caring, this NVR methodology practitioner. So I thought, right, I'm going to go to this NVR training. It's only for a couple of hours. I get there, and it's not a course. It's actually a support group for parents who have done the NVR course. So the lady who runs the course has got these little ceramic hearts that we're making for the next cohort, and we're each pressing letters into these hearts, and the letters that she's picked spell out hope. So we're rolling out these shapes, we're making hearts, and we're putting hope, and I'm like holding them thinking, I need to kind of like, I feel like I need some hope right now. But what was really interesting was there was another parent in that group there who was also going through the same thing as me in terms of getting building work done, the legalities, the stress. So it was great because I was able to share my stress with someone who completely gets it. And I could feel myself coming down from that hopelessness. I think sometimes when we descend into mental pain, it comes from a place of not knowing what's coming, and hopelessness, and that catastrophizing, those thoughts spiraling out of control. So I was really lucky that I connected with this wonderful lady, and we swapped numbers, and she's been a great help. It's been awesome. But that night, again, beautifully timed. I often say that I feel sometimes like the universe likes to take a giant shit on my head and test me. But that day when my mental health was spiraling out of control, and I think that's what upset me more than anything, was how fast it had taken over. I've suffered with poor mental health in the past, burnout, whether you call it a breakdown or not sure, because never actually went and spoke to a professional about it at the time. But it felt like it had happened and taken over so quick. And I have so many things in my toolbox, in my self-care toolbox, to pull me out of those situations. I think that was where the panic was also coming from. Like, I thought I was over this. Like, how is this happening again? How is my mental health spiraling and so poor? And how has it happened so quickly? So luckily, as I said, the universe had an NVR support group that day. So tick that box of sharing and connecting with someone who got it. And then my wedding anniversary was a couple of weeks ago. And my husband, Sean, bought us 2 tickets to see Jim Jeffries, the Australian comedian. Now, if you've never heard of Jim Jeffries before, he is very close to the bone, says the C word a lot, hysterical, like so funny, but it's like, whoa, shock factor funny. Now, if, like me, you ever have a period of time where your mental health is spiraling, or you feel it is spiraling out of control, quite often people will tell you to do the self-care piece. So running a bubble bath, journaling. Why don't you meditate? Like I do, go for a silly little walk for your silly mental health. Go to the gym. Actually, if I ever find myself in this position again, I'm immediately going to book a comedy gig. Because what I realised in sitting on the second row, by the way, of Jim Jeffries, with him there right in front of me, and the two support acts are there right in front of me, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to pick on us. But in being in the space and the energy of that performance and everybody else's laughter and the positivity and the feel-good effects of it, it was impossible for me to sit and watch that show and sit in my shit at the same time. It was impossible for me to laugh my tits off at the comedians whilst also spiraling out of control with my mental health. And it was the best therapy, the best tonic, the best thing ever. And I ended up feeling like it had given me an energetic wash over that time period. And then actually I was really lucky. Thank you again, universe. I also had tickets for Joanne McNally, the Irish female comedian who is just brilliant, also co-host of the podcast My Therapist Ghosted Me. She is one of the funniest women I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. So I took my mother-in-law on Saturday to see her. So it felt like a really good week of a lot of laughter to get me out of that hole and get me out of that place and space. But in the spirit of sharing that my mental health wasn't good and asking for a collective consciousness to come up with tools and tips and tricks, I went to where I always go for the answers to everything. You know, some people might use Yellow Pages, some people might use Google. I post question boxes on my Instagram stories because the people who are on Instagram are just brilliant with their advice and tips. So I asked, when you're feeling wobbly and when you're feeling like your head has gone west, what do you do to pull yourself out of anxiety? And so here, like a lot of people said the gym. A lot of people said the gym. And I did do that when I felt like, and I think that's also contributed to my poor mental health. I've been in this routine of going to the gym regularly, religiously, at least 3 times a week. And I have, I don't know if you can see, if you're on audio, video, you can see where I'm pointing to on my wrist. We think I've either torn or really strained a piece of cartilage in the wrist here called the TFCC. And it basically is what stabilizes the wrist. So I've gone from someone who has finally found an exercise regime where I'm not punishing myself for something that I've eaten. I'm not trying to burn as many calories as possible. It's me against the weights every single week, and I'm trying to smash a personal best every week. So I'm lifting heavier and heavier every week, and I'm feeling like amazing for it. I am in a bigger body than I have been in the past, and I'm using it in a way for strength and for feeling like just accomplished. So to have that taken away, I have to wear a strap, call it my strap on. I tell the girls, I forgot my strap on when I go to the gym. So I have to wear this strap around my wrist to like compress it, I suppose, to stabilize it. And even with that strap on, see, it's funny, innit? Even with the strap on, I can only lift like 7.5 kilos either side. Then, you know, some exercises I was lifting 30 kilo dumbbells. And so it just feels like I've taken 20 steps back. So I had been shying away from the gym. Again, if you're a long time listening to this podcast, you'll know I'm really trying to work on that all or nothing mindset, that perfectionist mindset that I feel like holds me back. So I definitely got into that of, well, I can't even fucking lift heavy. I can't be my usual weightlifting badass bitch self. So what's the fucking point? Which isn't the right mentality. When you're injured, you've got to keep going, and sensibly, of course, with the help of my physio and telling me what to do. But I'd stopped, I'd like shied away. So on that Tuesday, I had gone to the gym in the morning because I knew that I needed something. And a lot of the people, there were so many, I'm just looking at the responses now because I screenshot loads of them. There were loads of them that said like the gym, I go for a run, I go for a walk in mental health. Someone here, I feel seen, said stuff my face. Yeah, I knew that was something I mentioned as well. So along with Townville, the game of Townville, now I'm sure I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but in December 2023, I decided to stop eating sweets, crisps, chocolate and nuts. Now, nuts had crept back in quite early on for fibre, and the chocolate had crept in the form of dark chocolate. And then over the Halloween weekend, the sweets crept in, again, in this kind of effort to drop the perfectionism, I thought, right, I'm just going to try it. Fuck it, I'm just going to try it. And then I spent the whole weekend like binging out on sweets. And that was the kind of point where I was like, oh, this isn't good. I was buying toffee poppets from the shop and eating them in the car and then hiding the wrappers. And I just thought, this is sneaky, shitty behaviour again. This is not good, because ultimately nobody else gives a shit whether I'm doing it or not, but I do. When I do that, I feel a sense of shame. And it's a bit silly, really, because I can eat what the fuck I want if I want to. But it's like this like big red button that sometimes I've just got to press to just make things even harder on myself. Like, you're feeling anxious. You're feeling shit. I know what you can do. You can make everything 500 fucking times worse by pressing the big fuck it button. And that's what it felt like. So I was feeling kind of like full of shame, full of self-loathing. And it's horrible. It's just not a nice place to be. And a lot of people resonated with that. A lot of people said that they either drink too much or they binge eat. And I feel that, somebody here says, I hide and detach, unfortunately. But if you know that and you're aware of that, I'd say it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how long you do it for. Someone else says, get outside, listen to music, chat to a stranger, dance it out. Go for a walk, rain or shine. Let me see some more here. Gym, eat and cry. Take my shoes off and ground my soul on either grass or sand. Watch Michael Galian meditations on YouTube or Kirsty Gallagher. And then someone else says, pop a I can't say this word, hang on. Propranolol. Fuck me, that is a tongue twister. Pop a propranolol. And I Googled this, and this is an anxiety medication. Well, I wasn't at this point going to go to the GP. But then this just made me laugh so much. My friend Ben answered my question on Instagram stories where I said, what do you do when you're feeling down and you're feeling anxious to get out of it? And he wrote, suck dick. And I thought that was the worst piece of advice that I've ever been given, because that is the last thing I want to do when I'm feeling like utter shit. So Ben, your suggestions are completely blanked and unfounded. But the whole kind of like point of this podcast was when I had a laugh at the Jim Jeffries gig and we're in the car on the way home and I've spent like these 3-day periods spiraling out of control, actually I was able to take stock and go, but it was only 3 days. And in the past, it may have been 3 weeks or 3 months. And so I would like you, if you take anything from this podcast, to think about what is it like when you are mentally spiraling, you're feeling that anxiety. What is it? How do you know? Like, how does it present physically, first of all? So for me, I was snappy, my heart was racing, ended up shaking. My thoughts as well, so like mentally, how does it present mentally? I'm catastrophizing. I'm thinking in terms of emotion and not data and logic. Environmentally, how does it present? So for me, I was just ignoring everything and playing on Townville. I was properly disassociating by using Townville. And I think like when I said that person had responded with, I hide and detach, unfortunately. But if you know that, hopefully you can, nip it in the bud a little bit quicker. And if you're able and you feel confident to go one step further and discuss that with your nearest and dearest. So for example, my husband knows if he sees me all of a sudden just constantly eating what we would class junk food, there's a problem there. That is a manifestation, an outward physical manifestation of what's going on in my head. And so he will gently be like, are you sure you want to do that? Because he knows it just makes me feel shit. Or he might say, do you want some fruit? Or, just try and make healthier choices that are not going to induce that shame and stuff. So if you can share the things that maybe you do with your nearest and dearest and be like, if you see me doing this, I'm probably not okay. I'm probably not all right. Chat it out. As I said, I rang my mum. I spoke to mum and dad on speakerphone. I spoke to my sisters. Just verbalising it and vocalising it, I feel, can sometimes get it out, because we can feel so consumed with holding it in like a pressure cooker inside. And it can be really, really hard and really difficult. And then my final piece of advice would be to laugh, to do something that makes you laugh, whether that is, I don't know, being with your kids or your pets and enjoying, their company. Sometimes that can be really hard to do when you're in a place of not feeling great and not feeling down. But for us, like having a family rave and just watching the little kids in particular just go for it, feel the beat and proper rave, it will always put a smile on my face. Cuddling the dog, as annoying as he can be, just sitting there and holding him and feeling his body and his warmth can be really, really helpful. And so, yeah, and I think also there is a point of accepting too. So I had felt in that moment as well, on the weekend, my husband was working, my birth son, was out doing his favourite hobby, mountain biking, even though he's still got a broken hand, but hey ho, that's a podcast for another day. Kids, teenagers, for fuck's sake. So I'm there with the kids who were quite feral, and it was just really hard work because I'm not feeling great, so I'm feeling like my battery's drained. And I did have a moment where I felt like I was wallowing in self-pity of, this isn't the life that I chose. These ultimately, they're not my kids. This isn't the life that I chose. What would I be doing? And I had to really stop and take a minute and be like, no, actually you did. You said that you were going to do this. So you either keep beating yourself up about the choice that you made, or you accept that this was the choice that you made. You made this choice. You're going to make this work. And right now your behavior and your thought process isn't in alignment with that choice that you made. And you're just pissing yourself off and you're just spiraling out of control. And then when it comes to choices, I was listening to a really cool podcast episode. So Sarah Knight, who's a coach, has a podcast called It's Got Pockets. I'm going to be a guest on there. I've just actually recorded an episode with her. And she recorded an episode with a brilliant lady, a Canadian woman called Jenny, who has a podcast called, I can't remember, it's about whispering. I'll put it in the show notes. But this lady is Canadian and took a chance by starting a new life in the UK. And she said something that was so profound to me that I actually stopped the podcast. I paused it and I wrote it down. And she said when she was on that flight, she had a word with herself and said, I am choosing to trust myself that I can make this work. And I was like, oh, mic drop moment. So I paused it, rewound it, wrote it out. In fact, here's one I prepared earlier. I wrote it out in my journal yesterday. So she said, I need to make the choice to trust myself that I'm going to make this work. So regardless of what happens, I can't control other people, but what I can control is myself, and I need to trust that. She also talked about, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? So I know in the past when I've been spiraling out of control, the author Tim Ferriss, author of the 4-Hour Workweek, did a TED talk about this, about like, what is the worst thing that can happen in any situation? And then like working backwards from it. And so Jenny, this lady on the episode of It's Got Pockets, said, like, what's the worst that can happen? And how could I navigate myself out of it? Because, the important bit, I trust myself to do something if it doesn't work out. And this kind of like self-trust piece, I realised was the bit that I was missing. It was the bit that was forcing me into this spiral of going down and down and down and my mental health not being great. That previous iteration of me, the woman who wrote books about stopping procrastinating and self-discipline, used to also talk on stages, in businesses, in schools, to leaders, to people, do podcast interviews about my belief that when you do the things you say you're going to do, you build self-trust. And when you build self-trust, you build self-belief. And when you've got self-belief, that's when things happen. That's when you achieve goals. That's when you're happy. That's when you're in alignment. So I knew in that moment that self-care for me wasn't going to be bubble baths and meditation and journaling. It was going to be keeping my promises to myself. It was going to be trusting myself again. It was going to be realising after 3 days that I'm spiraling out of control and having that self-trust to go, fucking delete Townville, you dickhead, because it's costing you precious sleep. It's costing you time and presence with your children. And you really don't need to fucking raise cows because you're 43 and you've got too much fucking on to be doing that. And so to kind of round this episode up, I would really encourage you to think about, are you trusting yourself right now? Are you trusting yourself to do the things you say you're going to do or that you want to do? Or are you continually letting yourself down? And that is then resulting in you feeling anxious, spiraling out of control, feeling like you don't have a choice in life, feeling like life is so much harder than it needs to be? Are you actively sabotaging because it's easier for your brain to just be in the shit than it is to actually pull your finger out, keep your promises to yourself, trust yourself, believe in yourself, and live a happier, better, healthier, more optimized life? And not wanting to get on my soapbox and feel like a motivational speaker, I'm going to leave that there. And if you've got any feedback on this, if this has helped you, please do let me know. Get in touch. You can email me, gemma@gemmaray.com. You can find me, Gemma D. Ray, D-E-E Ray, on Instagram. And you can also find me as Gemma D. Ray on TikTok too. Send me a message. Let me know, what is it that you need to trust yourself more with that's going to help you feel that little bit brighter and better. And as always, if you are a long-time listener of this podcast, you will know I am trying to make this work around my children. And so I have a buy me a coffee link. If you have enjoyed this conversation and you would have enjoyed this together over a cup of caffeine, please do let me know. And you can support the podcast by going to buymeacoffee.com/Gemma Ray. And I've talked about my books as well. Stop Procrastinating and Start Living, Self-Discipline, and Stop Procrastinating in 6 Steps. They are all available on Amazon, or you can click the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad I've been able to finally record this podcast because, like I said, it's been 2 weeks of trying to do it. Thank you to my mate Kim for loaning me her beautiful kitchen to be able to record this. And hopefully, I will be back next week. Cheers for listening.